Okay, so I think we're live now. So welcome everyone to Healthwatch Berries live with regards to Gamblers Anonymous with Pauline and James today on Wednesday the 17th of July. We've just got a couple of things to go through before we start the stream. So our guidelines is to be accepting. Everyone is welcome regardless of race, ethnicity, national origin, affiliation, sexual orientation, sex, gender identity or ability. We don't want to make advances or comments on appearance that might make somebody feel uncomfortable. And we don't want to intentionally provoke, threaten, or insult anybody. We also don't want to flood the chat. So we do want to keep the conversation going, but if we're repeatedly sending the same message, other people's comments can get lost. So we will get to it. And don't self-promote, please, because we're not here for a sales pitch. So we want to stay focused on the topic of the stream. So if it is something that is linked towards gambling and Gambling Anonymous, then that's great. But otherwise, can we please keep that out? And we also want to keep it clean. So we don't want any shocking, obscene, vulgar or inflammatory language. We want to leave that out, please. So today we're going through the introduction with myself. And then we've got Pauline and James who are going to speak to us around their experiences. And then we've got a couple of questions to ask them at the end. If there's any questions anybody would like to ask, please feel free to put them in the comments and we can get them through to them. So Healthwatch is your health and social care champion, and we make sure your NHS leaders and other decision makers hear your voice and use your feedback so that we can improve care. We listen to your experiences of using health and social care services, and we share them with those with the power to make change happen. And we can also provide you with information and advice. So ways that we can support you as Healthwatch: we signpost to local or online support groups. We can give you information and advice about you or your family members' healthcare. We can listen to your experiences of using health and social care services and pass them on to the people we mentioned before. And here are our contact details. I'm just going to leave them up for a second. And then I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass over to the lovely Pauline and James. So whenever you're ready, lovelies, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Pauline and I'm the Public Relations Officer for Gamblers Anonymous. So just to let you know, we're a network of support groups of compulsive gamblers in recovery, and we help others to achieve abstinence from gambling. There's no waiting list to join the groups and no requirements to join other than a desire to stop gambling. We have 250 meetings each week throughout the country, and we have some online ones, some online meetings as well. We're made up of members from all different backgrounds and from all walks of life. We have a website which is gamblersanonymous.org.uk. So is it possible to share that after the Facebook Live?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Comments.
Yeah, we have a 24-hour national information line, and we have a local information line number, which I'm sure we can also share, that can direct you to any of the meetings. There's a local meeting in Bury on a Monday night, and there's 5 in central Manchester. Last weekend, we started a new women's preferred meeting for any women that prefer not to go to a mixed meeting or want extra support in between their normal meetings. And there's many meetings also in Greater Manchester, surrounding areas and beyond. You're welcome to attend any of the meetings you like, and you'll always get a warm welcome, understanding and support wherever you go. So when we attend GA meetings, we find that many people suffer from the same feelings of guilt, shame, loneliness and hopelessness that we did. And what we found, that we were no longer alone. So finally, other people understood what we were going through. Nobody judged us, and we felt at home. So at last we could start feeling some hope for the future. So that's just a little bit about Gamblers Anonymous. And I'm going to hand over to James, who's going to share some of his experiences in gambling and also his recovery.
I'm James, a compulsive gambler. I've gambled all my life till I found GA. That I've done horrible things in my life through gambling, which make you feel terrible. And I knew I had to do something about it. So I went to GA. And the beauty about GA is, this is no disrespect to anybody else who doesn't gamble. You're talking to people who understand you and you know where you've been. Because everybody in that room will have done what I've done. So you get the advice back. And you declare yourself, which like, James, I'm a compulsive gambler, when your last bet was. And then you go around the room and we give therapies. And I took on a lot of roles within. I threw myself into it the first time, and I stopped gambling for 5 years. And when you declare yourself, you say like, it's 5 years since my last bet, it's 10 years. And I got this thing in my head, 5 years, why do I still have to go to compulsive gambling? And I walked away. And within weeks, I was back gambling. And the silliest thing about it, it taught me something. I'm a compulsive person. I've got an illness. If whichever way you look at it, compulsive or illness, I've got it. And it taught me I've got to go back to GA. If I don't go to GA and get the advice and the help, I'll just go back to gambling. And so I know I have got to go. And also, as Virginia's Pauline said, I took over the regional phone line, and it's a great help when people phone you up. Like recently, one got in touch with me last week. It was his friend and his employer tried to find help for him because he was just putting his wages in, and he was on the verge of losing his marriage and all this business. And would I give him a call? But we can't call them back. They've got to call us. So he did ring me, and I've kept in touch only by texting. And he went to his first meeting last night. He's texted me this morning. He went to his first meeting this morning. This is his friend texted me, like, and he said he phoned him straight away after coming off the meeting. He said he couldn't believe what he got from the meeting. He'll definitely be going next week, because they explained to him when he got in touch with me last week, you've got to take on board, you've got a friend, also your employer, right, who's helping you. You've got to think how many times he might wanted to sack you, for because of your gambling, and he's helping you. A lot of people out there don't get that help because families. I'm not saying it's horrible. It happened to me. I lost my parents for 20 odd years because of my gambling. They didn't want to know me, so I didn't have any family life. And you try and explain this to people, and you find out a majority of the people who are coming to GA are young people because of the slots, gambling on the mobile phones, which I'm 64. I don't even know how to work a mobile phone. So gladly, I didn't gamble on the phone, right? Mine was just purely bookmakers. But you explain to them, you can put blocks in place, on your phone, buy yourself from bookmakers, casinos, and, all these. And it's a massive help. And coming to the meetings, and this is, I've been to psychiatrists and these type of people. I didn't get the same help as I did from them rooms, because of people understand you. I mean, it's perhaps the same in people who take drugs or alcoholics, because they have meetings for them and they're talking to people who understand them. Because people used to say to me, why do you have to have a bet tomorrow? Why do you have to have a bet tonight? Because I was ill. I was a compulsive person, and my compulsiveness was gambling. But my advice is, as we're talking now, and I said to people, well, get to a meeting as soon as possible. We always say, give it 90 days, right? 90 days, if you want, the bookmakers still with her, give it 90 days. And keep coming to the meetings, and and we've got a WhatsApp group where you can talk to people during the week. If you're feeling down, you put a message on, and somebody will get back to you. And that's a great help, a massive help. There's more things to help people now than, that perhaps years ago. And I always say in a meeting that if we all, and everyone in the room, if we all wrote an autobiography about our lives, the only thing that would be different was the name on the top of the paper, because we'll have all done the same. Stolen, robbed, con people, whatever, to get that money for gambling. And now I don't gamble. I've stopped gambling for a while now again. Money hasn't got the same value as it had before. I don't, I had to go out and have £100 in my pocket or more because I needed it for gambling. I don't need it now. And if I need money in my pocket for a pint or a cup of coffee, or that's all I need it for now. It hasn't got the same value. So I know now I've got to keep going to GA. I've got to make myself which I am doing, a compulsive GA member, and like with the phone line, helping people, which you get a great thing from doing. So that's my story as we speak.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, thank
All right.
you.
Nice to meet you anyway.
Thank you so much. That was lovely. Thank you.
Are we ready? Ready to
Absolutely.
move on? Right, thank you. Well, I'm Pauline, a compulsive gambler, and I'm just going to say that for myself, my absence from gambling wouldn't have been possible without regular attendance at GA meetings. At this point in time, I'm just over 10 years in recovery, and regular attendance is still important for me. For me, it's a one day at a time long-term solution, and it does give me a fantastic opportunity to give something back. But it is one day at a time. It's not looking at somebody and thinking, wow, 10 years. It really is just one day at a time. So I was introduced to gambling from a really young age. My grandparents were addicted to horse racing. I still don't know to this day anything about horse racing. All I knew that was they were watching horse racing, ringing up in those days, they used to just ring up and put a 10 pence each way bet on a regular basis and sit glued to the TV screen. And that my father used to regularly have to ring up and pay their debts off. But my grandma taught me how to play cards for money, and but I could never lose because she always used to give me the bag of coins at the end of the week when she went home. So that seemed like really good fun. We lived near the seaside, and so she took me to the bingo games at the seaside and the one-armed bandits. So again, it all just seemed like really good fun. So as an adult, I battled a number of other addictions, managed to conquer those, and left gambling pretty much alone. And then life got really difficult. I ended up as a single parent running a business in an abusive relationship, and I kind of isolated myself from any kind of support, any friends. And then I turned to what I called arcades, which are now called adult gaming centres, for stress relief, because I remembered that used to be quite good fun. I started off playing on the ticket machines, but the ones where you could win 800 tickets for decent prizes, never just the little ones. And then one day, I discovered the over 18s sites for bigger prizes. At the time, we were in a recession and my business was facing bankruptcy. I was facing bankruptcy and I had £10. And I thought the bright lights of the over 18 place attracted me. And I went in with £10 and I had a decent win. And I was like, what? So I went back in a few days later, had another big win. And to me, the machines were just like games that I would play on my phone. I'd never considered for many years that they were gambling until I went into Gamblers Anonymous. I had a few big wins on the trot. And then from that day on, I also discovered that you could do it. I mean, they weren't really at that stage on your phone. So it's sort of going back 15 years plus. But you could do them on your laptop online, for which you could put in an awful lot more money than you could on a machine, which was considerable amounts of money that you could put in on a machine. So you could win a lot, but you could lose a lot. But the psychology I had was I ignored what I was losing and focused on what I could win, and I picked the machines with the big jackpots, or I went on the sites with the big jackpots. But every time I had a big loss, I began to feel suicidal. And I was just for a number of years in like a hamster on a wheel, spending every spare minute of every day gambling, ridiculous excuses of where I was, what I was doing, the lies I told. And I would tell myself my debts were down to that I couldn't, the recession that we were in, the business was struggling, where in reality, all the money I was earning was going on gambling. And the money I was in debt was, I was like, well, my living expenses. So that's how the lie I created for myself. But every time I had heavy losses, I was just suicidal. But really, it just became to me that it wasn't gambling, it was just playing games, and the money kind of became irrelevant. There were red flags, like I think in the back of my mind, I knew something wasn't quite right, but I wasn't really able to admit that to myself. And that's something I identify with people that do call up or ask questions. Like you do, like in the back of my mind, something, just say to myself, hang on, should I be doing this? It was quite traumatic getting to Gamblers Anonymous. I had rang the Samaritans a number of times due to, feeling suicidal. My partner was abusive in a number of ways. He didn't physically hit me, but he was mentally abusive. And he would actually stop me ringing the Samaritans. And he would say to me, you don't need to go to GA. You're not that bad. And in order to try and stop gambling, then I would just try and go to bed. And I felt like a drug addict trying to come off drugs. I would literally shake. And then he would say to me, come on, get up, I'll take you out somewhere. We'll go to an arcade. And he would just keep on and on at me until I would get up and give in. And he would basically say to him, you obviously don't want to kill yourself because you wouldn't be ringing the Samaritans. You would just do it if you were serious about doing it. I mean, I was completely isolated. It never occurred to me to speak to a friend or anyone about any of it. I had phoned the National Gambling Helpline a number of times, but the penny just really didn't drop. And eventually one night I just thought, I can't take this anymore. And I just said, I'm going to Gamblers Anonymous and you're not stopping me. So that's what I did. I walked out the house, I left the chaos behind me, and I went to my first meeting. And that was the beginning of the rest of my life. And that was sort of the end of the relationship. And it took another 6 months for me to have enough strength for me to say to him, and now you're leaving. And really, that first day, I went from strength to strength. I had no idea how I was going to stop gambling, but I knew that I had to. I put blocks in place which were nowhere near as easy as they are now. If someone comes to my meeting now, I can say to them, here's an online list. You don't have to go into any arcades or places that you gamble. Post an online list in the WhatsApp group. You just contact this place, this place, this place, online or by phone, and they'll do it all for you. It wasn't as easy as that then, but I did it. You know, if you want to stop gambling, you can do it. The support really, I accepted 100% I can't do this because one, I didn't want to be the person I was. I was a nasty person. I didn't look after my family. My family was nearly destroyed. My business was nearly destroyed. I was nearly destroyed. I would not be here if I hadn't stopped gambling. For me, I can't risk a £1 bet because I would just go back to being that person, and it's not worth the risk of going back down that road again. So I accept that. So I wouldn't take that chance. And that's for each person to decide for themselves. But it took me quite a while, and that's what I always say to people. Don't expect all those feelings of guilt and shame to go away straight away, because it takes a long time to forgive. It took me a long time to forgive myself, but with the support of people in the rooms, that is entirely possible. And if you need help from other sources, that's okay too, because at that time that was also difficult, but now there's more resources out there for people. And I found a welcome in those rooms that I didn't find anywhere else. And that's not to say that other people hadn't tried to help me, but I wasn't ready to accept that from anywhere else. And a number of my friends had said to me afterwards, when I disclosed it to them, why didn't you say anything to me? I would have, you know, but other people that don't have the same problem don't understand in the same way. So I found people there didn't judge me for what I'd done, and it was a safe space to talk about the things that I'd done and the way that I felt. And even now, after all this time, it's still a safe space for whatever's going on in my life. It's not gambling related anymore, but whatever's going on in my life, I can go and say, oh, this has happened, I've had a crap week, or I've had a good week, or this is going on. It's just a safe space to share, be able to help newcomers if they come, whatever. It's a safe space to share, support each other. And there's contact in between meetings if it's needed. And believe you me, I did need that in the beginning. I needed to make myself safe from thoughts of gambling. And I just really did use that. And I think I probably speak for most people and say that I isolated myself so much when I was gambling. It was that opposite of connecting with people and being brave enough to reach out to people and having people that were willing to allow me to reach out to them. That made all the difference, to know that I wasn't alone anymore. That made a huge difference. The opposite for me of isolation was that connection with other people. And then the big difference is, if I can be open and honest, then it helps. Sometimes it helps other people to also be open and honest and know that they can get through. If she can do that, then I can do that. And then obviously other people demonstrated that to me at the beginning. And one of my main mantras now, which I also say to other people, as long as I don't gamble, I have a chance of getting through anything that life throws at me today. And that's, I like to break things down into very simple steps. Whatever problem I'm faced with, anything that seems too overwhelming, break it down into simple steps. And that's one very simple thing. I have an awful lot of gratitude because it's been a long time since I had an urge to gamble, and I have a lot of gratitude for that. But I know today, if I did, I have a strategy for dealing with it. And that's come from going to GA. So finally, I'd just like to give you a message. If you are struggling with gambling, And even just getting to the stage where you just might be spending a bit too much time gambling, losing a bit too much money, or it's in your thoughts too much, then I'd just like you to have a bit of hope that you don't have to get to such a desperate stage that I was at, that help and support is there for you much sooner, and you don't have to get trapped into that desperate cycle. You know, there's help there before before you get that bad. This is a message that in my role as a public relations officer, I'm trying to raise awareness that a lot of people come to rooms before they get that bad now, and that is such a positive step to take. You know, we just don't want to see people when they're lost everything or close to losing everything. So more power to you if you can do that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, excuse me, for sharing that, Pauline. That is a very powerful story. Just got a few questions, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
First one, if somebody's due to come to GA for the first time, what sort of things should they expect, really, when they walk through the door?
Firstly, a warm welcome. Someone will usually take them to one side and explain what happens at the meeting. Not every single meeting's run the same, but one is all anonymous. It's first names only. Nobody's going to disclose, say like they've seen somebody at a meeting or anything like that. Like James said, we just normally say the date of our last bet, whenever that was. There's no shame involved, there's no judgment. Sometimes we do a reading from one of the books. We have a huge variety of like self-help literature that's based around, GA. And then we normally just share some stories. For a newcomer, we might tell several people might tell a little bit of their background, what they gambled on, relative to the newcomer, depending on what they gambled on and how they recovered from that. Normally, if most groups have a WhatsApp group now, so we'll offer them the opportunity to join that. And if the person wants to share some of their reasoning for coming, then that's up to them. We never force somebody to speak if they don't want to speak, if they just want to sit and listen, or if they don't want to put their number in the WhatsApp group, that's entirely up to them. We'd never force somebody to do anything that they're not comfortable doing.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I've learned a lot today. Thank you for sharing your story, because I didn't realise that symptoms could be quite physical. Like you said, you was in bed and you were shaking and your mental health really deteriorated. So hopefully that'll be very reassuring for people, because that'd be very confusing for me personally. I wouldn't link the two together necessarily all the time, especially in the midst of it. But as you were saying about everything remaining anonymous, if somebody was concerned about going to a GA group session, but they were worried because somebody that they know might be there, even though there are promises of obviously anonymity, would they be able to go to a group that maybe wasn't close to them? Would that be allowed?
Yeah, I mean the main the reason we call Gamblers Anonymous is to retain our identity. I mean, occasionally somebody goes and don't give their real name, which is fine. I mean, it is completely against our principles to reveal anybody's identity outside of the rooms. But any meeting is open to anybody, right? For example, I go and stay at my daughter's, right, in the south of England, and I go to all different meetings there when I'm there. But we have loads of meetings, as I've mentioned, in Greater Manchester. Any meeting is open to any member, and we do recommend actually that if you're able to go to different meetings, that you try different ones, and just see, if you have a preference for a home meeting. And also, especially in the beginning, in order to get more recovery into you, that you do try more meetings anyway. But if your preference is to go to a different meeting that's not as close to home, by all means, do whatever works for you.
Fabulous, that's very reassuring. So obviously there's a certain social element to gambling as well at times, like casinos, as you've mentioned, and we've just had the Euros. I'm sure there's many people that have wanted to put bets on that. So when somebody enjoys it occasionally, how would they know if they need to go and get help?
I mean, there's probably a few red flags. I mean, one of the things I mentioned was in the back of my mind, I kind of had a feeling that something wasn't quite right, that I didn't address that. I mean, self-honesty, self-awareness, that's a thing. But I mean, some of the factors that we would consider, if you're kind of losing time from work, if you're on your phone a lot, gambling when you shouldn't, you're doing that in, say, work time. If you were doing that in home time when you perhaps shouldn't be, say you were supposed to be keeping an eye on your child and you were finding you were gambling on your phone. If you were thinking, oh, I need to stop this now, but you found that you couldn't. If it was still fun for your friends, but you were finding you were doing it on your own and it was becoming not fun for you. You find that maybe you were telling little lies about the time you were spending or the money you were spending, or you were finding that you were becoming a little bit obsessed with it, or you couldn't stop thinking about it. Those things might be bits of red flags, and then you might find perhaps it would be best for me to talk to someone about it before you get to that desperate stage I was talking about. It might be that you could just nip it in the bud at that stage. And we do have a number of people that have flagged themselves and come to the meetings before they get to a bad stage and just said, look, I've got to this stage, I've recognised it's a problem, and they've come, and people at the meetings only there to help and support you, not there to judge.
That's brilliant to know. So a question following obviously your story, because I do agree that your ex-relationship situation was incredibly abusive, and if anything, it was a block to your recovery. If somebody was the partner to somebody who had recently confessed that they've got a gambling problem, and for instance, they're in a massive amount of debt as a result of this, and they're feeling overwhelmed, they don't know how to start getting help for their partner or for their debts, what would you recommend as a first step for those people?
Yeah, we do get quite a few calls from partners, and I mean it must be really overwhelming. And like I said, for myself, I always pick big problems down into small steps. So I mean, the financial advice for myself when I've been in financial difficulty, I mean, obviously we're not officially advised to offer debt advice. So what I've used myself is citizens advice and step change, which are obviously free to use. So I'd always say go for something that's free to use. That's just my personal opinion, who I've used in the past. For the partner, they've got to obviously want to stop gambling, but usually when they've got to the point where they've completely broken down and said, this is the mess I'm in, this is everything, then they're normally at the stage where they are ready. So then I would suggest that they suggest to the partner they either take the step of going to the meeting or ringing the line and getting details of the meeting. And in the Northwest area, then we will either put them in touch with the local group, or if it's very local to us, then we will normally meet them at the local meeting and take them to the first meeting. Because we're just local to the groups. So just to make them feel that bit more comfortable about going to the meeting if that's what they need. But that person does have to ring us first. We can't, like James said, we can't, we're not allowed to ring them because that'd be seen we're trying to force them to go to meeting. So they would have to make that call, or if they're okay going to the meeting on their own, then they can absolutely just turn up to the meeting. For the partner, then they could just try one of the support services. There's a link to on the GA website, which is Gamanon. There are other ones out there, which offers family support to people that are affected by their partner's gambling. Because I do think they probably do need as much support as you know, the person themselves. It's a lot to deal with for one person.
It can be very overwhelming, I'm sure, for everyone.
Yeah.
And wanting to do best by the person you love as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be very overwhelming, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, that is the end of my questions, Pauline. Thank you so much for sharing that story. It was incredibly powerful. And thank you to James as well for what he's shared. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up our live?
No, I don't think so. I've enjoyed it, and I hope that people listening have enjoyed it as well. So hopefully they know a little bit more about Gamblers Anonymous, and there are, like I said, there is a local meeting in Bury and plenty around nearby within travelling distance as well.
Beautiful. We'll make sure to post all that information in the comments as well if anybody needs it, as well as your contact details to reach out in that number you were saying, because just to say again, they cannot ring you guys, that you do need to ring them, obviously, for the reasons mentioned. So thank you so much for that, Pauline. Really do appreciate every second you spent with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye.